Welcome to the Beat Pain Podcast, where we learn what actually works for pain relief, staying healthy, and navigating the medical world. I'm your host, Brandon Cope. Do you ever wonder how yoga might be helpful for your pain issues? In today's episode, you will hear a life-changing yoga journey. My guest is the creator of Applied Yoga Integration. He recently moved to Bali, Indonesia from New York City, not New Jersey, as I mistake later in this episode. You can follow his work on Instagram, Facebook, and you can find his website, appliedyogaintegration.com, all of which are linked in the show notes. Please enjoy my conversation with Jory Serota. Jory, it's so great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being with me. I love the conversations that we have. I love that you've got so many cool stories and that you're so vulnerable and open. You've got so many great things to share. You've been on an incredible yoga journey for a long time, and I would love to hear what just made you get into this yoga career. Why is yoga so impactful for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks, Brandon. It's nice to be here. We've known each other probably for around 5 or 6 years or so. And, when you're doing a podcast for the Neurokinetic Therapy community years ago, we got to speak together, and I really enjoyed that. So I'm happy to be on your new BEET podcast here today. I started practicing yoga in 1997. I was 17 years old, 17 or 18. And in my first semester of college at Florida State University, and a buddy of mine who, still lived up in New York. He was my best friend growing up. And he was also my tennis partner and tennis rival and whatnot. We were talking on the phone one day, and he's like, I'm going to go do yoga. And the first thing that pops into my mind is like, well, there's no way you're going to do yoga and I'm not.
That's a good friendship.
Yeah, we have tremendous love and tremendous amounts of competition at the root of our connection.
That's great.
So I think it was the next day, or it was sometime that week. I went to a yoga class, on campus, and was so utterly blown away by what happened in those 90 minutes. I left class. I was like floating on air. I felt like I could connect with any human being I wanted.
Wow.
It was, my fears and my insecurities were not there anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like psychosocial. I mean, you did yoga and you felt like fears and insecurities weren't there. That's crazy.
Gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And obviously that's just a temporary experience that I had, but it was such a profound experience that I was like, okay, well, if this is what's going to happen from one class, let's see what happens from 30 classes.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So, I started practicing sun salutations in my room, I think the next morning.
Yeah.
At 6 a.m. or something like that.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah, I almost didn't have another option. It was just so exciting,
Yeah.
And I started going to classes 2 or 3 times a week. And by the time I was 21, I found myself in India, traveling around and looking for a teacher. So that was kind of how I started practicing. I also found that during this time of my life, specifically my freshman and then part of my sophomore year of college, I was playing very competitive ultimate frisbee. So I played for the Florida State team, and we traveled all around the Southeast. We played every major college that you can think of. And the yoga practice was making me not only more limber, but way more agile on the ultimate frisbee field. So I started seeing how it was increasing my athletic potential. And I mean, man, I fell in love, I fell in love hard.
Yeah, that's a good experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, and what to say? Now it's 2020. I've been practicing for 23 years. I've gotten to travel around the world to teach yoga. Next month, March 14th and 15th, I'm actually going back to India to teach.
No way. Full circle.
Full circle.
That's cool.
And that's something I never thought I would do. I never thought that I would be going back to the birthplace of yoga to teach yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But yoga's been good to me. Life has been good to me, and I'm happy about the journey that I've been on.
That's cool. Yeah. So, I mean, when you did yoga, you had that first experience was really profound for you. That set you on your journey. And now that you're teaching, how do you feel like you're able to work with other people, and what kind of experiences now are you providing for other people? I know that you've created your own course, the Applied Yoga
Yeah.
Integration. Is
Yeah.
that, set it up for me in my mind here. Like, how is that either different or the same as yoga? What is it integrating with? I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. So, I I practiced very hard. As I said, I've been practicing for 23 years, and I would say between 2001 and somewhere around 2000, maybe 8, and maybe I took a little break then, and then again between 2010 and 2014. So, a good 10 years of my life, I was practicing on my own somewhere between, I don't want to exaggerate, somewhere between 2.5 and 4 hours every day.
Wow.
I had some periods in my life where I was actually practicing 7, 8 hours a day.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was a young 20-something year old kid, and even in my early 30s, with so much vigor and so much discipline and so much passion for the practice.
And
But
when you say
yeah,
practice, hold on. When you say
yeah,
practice, do you
sure.
mean like you were like at home doing it yourself for yourself, or practice is in you were at a studio teaching it to other people?
No, I mean, I was at home doing it for myself, practicing by myself for myself, always with the, you know, somewhat of a background intention of also teaching, of course.
Sure.
But I didn't really start teaching until 2005, and I taught for a couple of years, and I took a couple of years off. And it was only back in, I think, 2010 that I started teaching full time.
Wow.
But yeah, most of the time, and when I'm referring to, my practice here, this was just me on my mat in my house early morning until I was done.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that's some serious dedication. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, something started to happen though for me. A shift started happening around 2013, 14, 15, where some of my intense love for the practice for yoga started to change. And it started to change because I saw more and more that as healthy and positive as the intentions of the yoga practice are, and as the intentions of the yoga practitioner are, a lot of people are getting hurt in their practice.
Hmm.
Whether it's, something acute that happens, like they pull a muscle, well, that's going to happen in anything. I've got no concern for that. You overstretch your hamstring accidentally, that's going to happen playing
Sure.
tennis, baseball, anything. But it started to be shown to me that there were more repetitive stress and repetitive strain injuries that were taking place in the practice. And over the years, as yogis are turning 40 and 50 and 60, the cartilage in their joints is getting worn down, and they're needing hip replacements, and their backs are
Mm.
hurting. And I said, okay, you know what? Like, something has to change for me here. So as I began contemplating that, and I should preface this by from 2002 to 2015 or so, I studied Iyengar yoga incredibly religiously.
Okay.
And Iyengar yoga is the type of yoga that works very specifically on alignment, works on making sure your joints are in the right places. And in many ways, they are in terms of alignment, they're the elite of the yoga world.
Okay, gotcha.
But as I investigated more, I started looking at a lot of these Iyengar teachers and a lot of the Iyengar students, and they're like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Oh, my knee hurts. Oh, my back hurts. What should I do for my neck? My big toe feels like it has arthritis. My ankle doesn't, I'm not really walking that, and there were complaint after complaint after complaint. And my big, like what I like to say, my big come to Jesus moment was when my teacher, who at the time was the highest ranked Iyengar teacher in the world, who needed bilateral hip replacements.
No way.
Needed bilateral hip replacements. And he said that it was congenital, which maybe it was, maybe.
The way you said that. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you have to have a grain of doubt about him saying that. But he needed hip replacements for years. And then one day he was speaking and he's like, the doctors want to operate on both my shoulders. They say I need a bilateral shoulder replacement.
Wow. And
at that point I said, you know what? You are the person that I didn't say this to his face, obviously. But I was like, you are the person that I've been modeling myself after, modeling my teaching and modeling my practice. You need bilateral hip replacements, which, 350,000 Americans a year get a hip replacement.
Sure, yeah.
It's an incredibly common surgery. But now you're telling me you need bilateral shoulder replacement, and there is no way, my friend. I'm like, there's no way that this is congenital. You have been doing something in your practice to your shoulders that have worn down the joints, worn down the cartilage, and I have to start looking in a different direction at this point.
Yeah.
So it's really from that moment that applied yoga, which I had already been creating, was born. And applied yoga takes some of the alignment principles from Iyengar yoga. There are aspects of the practice that I think are brilliant. But for some of the listeners who are with us today, I also teach something called neurokinetic therapy. And neurokinetic therapy is a type of body work that uses manual muscle testing to assess for motor control functionality. We're looking through our body work practice here, through NKT, to see if someone's muscles and joints have the necessary function. And I said to myself, okay, well, if I am teaching this type of body work that is really here to identify weak areas and teach people how to strengthen those areas, not strengthen them like I'm going to make my bicep bigger, or I'm going to make my quads and glute, bigger also, but strengthen them in terms of the neurological connection that takes place from the brain through the spinal cord into those peripheral muscles. One of the things that NKT shows is that a lot of people, yogis included, strength and conditioning coaches included, every human being included, that there are breaks throughout the entire body between what takes place in the brain and the signal that gets sent to a particular muscle. So I said, okay, there isn't really that much in yoga that works on teaching somebody's joints and somebody's muscles how to move in space in a non-weight bearing position. How can I combine the classical yoga poses, the postures, with mobility exercises and with specific training that creates their joints and creates everything to be functional? Because we can take warrior pose. I'm sure people know warrior pose. You stand with your feet 3 feet apart, 4 feet apart, and you bend your knee one way. We can take warrior pose, but do we have the necessary, and I don't want to get too technical, but the necessary amount of hip flexion? If I can bend my knee at 90 degrees, I better be able to lift my knee to 90 degrees in the air. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I gotcha.
So like if I can't lift my knee to 90 degrees or to 100 degrees, but when I'm weight bearing and putting pressure on it, it's going to 90 and 100 degrees, there's a real discrepancy between what my body has a capability of doing with passively, and what my body has a capability of doing when it's asked to use motor control to do that action. So I hope I'm not going into it too much, but this whole applied yoga practice then is about creating our body to be strong, creating our alignment to be decent, but creating our motor control and our whole functionality to be efficient and effective.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, like you said, taking those principles from NKT, which is how we met. And like you were saying at the very beginning, I had you on my NKT podcast years ago. Those are such great principles that you learn from NKT and understanding how the nervous system works, taking that into the world of yoga. I mean, I don't know the whole history of yoga and what different yoga teachers there are, but I've never met another yoga teacher who looked at things through that lens. So I feel like you were really a pioneer for a lot of people in looking at it that way. And hopefully in teaching it with that mindset and that kind of model is going to save a lot of hips and a lot of shoulders.
That's the hope.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did that change for you personally? You said that, you did your own practice of yoga for, up to 4 hours, sometimes 8 hours in a day, long periods of yoga. How did you making this shift change for you doing yoga? I mean, would you do yoga as long? Did you exclude certain parts of yoga? What was kind of the personal shift for you in your yoga practice?
Yeah, I mean, my practice has dramatically changed. I went from practicing every single day of my life. And, I had those many years where I was practicing, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. But I also had, a lot of years where I would practice for an hour and a half or an hour. In the last several years, that kind of passion for practicing with such intensity has really, really, really waned for me. And so my practice generally these days, I went for a period of time where I wasn't practicing every day. I have a passion for meditation. And so I have months on end where I just get up and I like to drink a cup of green tea first. It's a kind of really mellow, nice caffeine for me that's not too intense.
Sure.
I get really good tea leaves from, different countries in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
But, drink a cup of tea and then I'll go meditate for 45 minutes. And I would do that for months on end. My truest passion in life is not creating a physically strong body. It's creating a mind that is liberated and awake.
Wow. That's a profound thing to say.
And so like whatever it is that I have to do for myself, and I'm trying to now bring this into my clients a little bit more, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but whatever I can do for myself that is in the, I never, I never know this phrase, in the vein or in the effort of, in the interest. That's what it is.
Oh, there you go. You got it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it too. Yeah.
Right. Whatever I can do that's in the interest of complete liberation and psychological awakeness and spiritual awakeness, that's what I want to do.
Now, that's a really profound thing to say, especially knowing that a lot of people listening to this right now have issues with mobility, balance, chronic pain. Doing things like yoga could be really difficult for them. And you're looking at that physicality from the perspective of what's happening in your mind, in your emotions, in your spirituality. That's a really powerful thing for people to hear, because I think that when somebody gets in this, repetitive cycle of pain, they've got that chronic state, they can get so focused on what's happening with themselves physically. And that's a really powerful thing for you to say, that your focus is shifting or has shifted into the spiritual, into the mental, emotional. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Thanks. I think it's always been there. I'm just allowing it to be there now.
Okay. So for somebody who want to get into yoga and they want to be exploring some of what you're experiencing, what do you think the start of that journey would look like for them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, first and foremost, someone who is looking to get into yoga because they have physical pain, or because they have some injuries, or because their body just in general doesn't feel well and they heard that yoga can help, the most important thing that anybody can ever do is find the right teacher. You know, one of the things that I teach in my weekend applied yoga integration seminars is there is no pose that is a cure for everything. Any single pose you do can possibly help you, and any single pose you do can possibly hurt you, depending on what your condition is and how you listen to your body and how you go in and out of that pose. You know, I have an online applied yoga mobility certification course. It's a 45-hour continuing education course. It's 9 modules. It covers every major joint in the body from head to toe. It's incredibly, incredibly thorough. It took me years to put together. And I have people that join this course. Well, when they're going through the course, I also make myself available to them for any questions that they might have. So I got a question from a student just 2 days ago, and she said, you know, what poses should I be doing, or what poses should my students be doing every day to make sure that our bodies are strong and healthy? And I wrote her back and I said, you know, there's no possible moral or ethical way for me to give you an answer to that without knowing what your body is, without knowing what your students' body are, and how you guys move. The truth of the practice is that the shapes that we take aren't the thing that heals and helps us. It's what we do within those shapes that helps and heals us.
Right.
So, do I have any advice on finding a teacher? Not really. You know?
Yeah.
Go to a couple classes, talk to some more experienced people, look for someone who has an understanding of yoga therapy or yogic biomechanics or something like that. And if you go to a class and you're like, that was bull, don't go back.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, when they walk into something new, forget about how to trust themselves. So I guess that's my biggest piece of advice there.
Okay. Awesome. No, that's good. I mean, yeah, people need to go and they need to explore and they need to see what works, and who has been through a journey with their yoga and their body and with what's happening inside of them, that they can then share their own journey with somebody else, that they can come alongside and kind of follow along that journey. It's different for everybody.
You know what? I think that hits it. You know, there are times in my life where I'm like, man, I have some back pain. Why would anybody trust me with their back? You know, or I'm like, God, my neck's been bothering me lately, and I'm calling myself a therapist. I'm like, what a joke of a human being I am. You know, like these thoughts come into me, but the fact is that the fact that I have some back pain from time to time, the fact that my neck hurts from time to time, is the thing that, one, not only gives me, you know, more of an understanding of how to work with back pain or how to work with neck pain, but it also generates a state of compassion for people who are experience similar kinds of discomforts.
That is so true. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I one of the most common things I see in my office is back pain. And of course, it's a very common issue here in America. A lot of people have back pain, but it's the one joint muscle issue that I've felt in my own body the most. And I definitely can feel for those people when they come in. It's like, oh yeah, it's probably going to feel like this. I know it's going to feel like that. And this is the exact same thing. I think to myself, well, my back was bothering me the other day, so who am I to help this person? No, I'm the perfect person to help them because I've experienced it. I know what it's like. I understand it, and I can go through the motions and the journey with them of showing them, hey, this is what's bothered me and helped me. Let me try that with you and see if that makes you, oh, it does help you. Okay, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. You know, I think as human beings, we all experience so much shame and embarrassment about things inside of ourselves that we deem as not perfect. You know, and if you follow the Brene Brown work, or if you've just been, you know, conscious of being okay with who you are, it's it's the expression of that vulnerability, the real openness about, hey, I'm experiencing this and I'm experiencing that, that allows people to connect with us because we're taking that mask down.
It's interesting that you bring up Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. I think that she's got so much great stuff. And it's really interesting to kind of take it and apply it to the physical body. I mean, when we think of shaming, there's so much physical shame that people feel, or so much, physical interaction that relates into a bunch of shame for people. And when it comes to the pain that people feel, or their movements, or their exercise, or how their body looks, there's so much associated with how that then changes a person's image, their identity, how they interact with other people. And let's just talk about pain for a second. When people know that they have pain, and maybe it's invisible, other people don't see that condition, it's hard for them to be vulnerable about that pain if they also feel some kind of shame associated with that pain. If a parent is in chronic pain and their child is taking care of them, there's, they might feel ashamed of themselves. Like, what kind of parent am I? You feel a certain level of shame. And then, people in your family are going out and playing sports or exercising, and you could feel a certain kind of shame. And that shame is a trap. That shame is only going to limit you from moving, and from being that parent that you can be, and from stepping into that vulnerability, and from being able to tell people about what your experience is. That shame will limit so many people in that experience. So that's really profound that you bring that up, that you make that connection. I think that's a connection that a lot of people need to make.
Yeah, I do too. I think that, I don't want to say shame, but let's say hiding shame is it's the killer of human intimacy.
Yeah.
And being vulnerable about shame, or being vulnerable about our pain, or whatever it might be that we're experiencing, is the thing that allows us to have a deeper and more meaningful connection with other human beings.
We're talking about journeys. We're talking about, vulnerability, and people going through what's happening in their bodies and their pain and what they're feeling. I'm interested because you're talking about finding a teacher who, has a journey that you can connect with, and that you can learn from. For a person who's in pain, they can learn from a teacher who is able to help them on their journey. You've taken an interesting twist in your journey. You've moved from New Jersey to
New York,
Bali. New York. You've moved from Wait, what happened to New Jersey? I thought you were in New Jersey.
No, never.
No? Okay.
No.
Never mind.
No.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Editing. I'm going to milk that editing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Although that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, New York. You used to live in New York, and now you've moved over to Bali. I mean, that's a change in life. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have probably been to Bali 10 times or so in the last 10 years. And in 2014, I spent most of the year here working at yoga teacher trainings, doing body work at one of the biggest yoga studios in all of Bali, and teaching workshops. It's a place that's incredibly close to my heart. Probably about, 2 years ago, when my girlfriend and I first got together, we both connected that we each of us had a real love for Bali.
Nice.
So, from the start of our relationship, she had this desire to move here. And I didn't really have the desire. I had just bought a house in New York. I was grounded. I was enjoying being grounded. I'm someone who's been very nomadic in my life. I've traveled the world many different times. I've been to, I don't know how many different countries. And I was excited to, buy my first house and settle down. But, as time went on, like, it started to become clear and clear to me that, my girlfriend's name is Megan, that when Megan spoke about moving to Bali, it wasn't just something that she was like throwing out there. It wasn't like something that she was just like, oh, I would love to move to Bali,
Yeah.
I was like, wow, no, she she needs to move to Bali.
Hmm.
Like she needs to have an experience here. And I'm going to go a little bit more, and I'm sure she'd be okay with me saying this. You know, she grew up in Queens, and she grew up in an environment that was incredibly unspiritually supportive.
Hmm.
So when she would have like inclinations towards self-growth and spirituality, they would be not only poo-pooed on, but she'd be made fun of.
Wow.
You know, and that's a pretty traumatic thing for, you know, a sensitive girl of 5 years, 10 years, 13, 14, 15 years to experience, for anybody to experience.
Yeah.
So, you know, at 37, I guess she was 36 when we moved here. So whatever, you know, she had never really lived in a spiritually supportive community.
Hmm.
You know, and I have, man. I mean, I've been in spiritually supportive communities for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, I lived and worked at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York for 7 years, which is the largest holistic healing center in the United States. You know, my group of friends in California are phenomenal when I was there for 6 years.
Hmm.
So, you know, after a period of time, I just looked at Megan. I was like, let's do it, honey. Let's go. You know, and the funny thing is, I mean, the benefits that are here for me are incredible. I mean, what to say? Like we've only been here for a couple months, and just a little background on where we are in Bali. We're in a place called Ubud. Ubud, I think, translates into change,
Oh,
or move.
change.
Yeah,
Wow.
something like
That's
that,
extra profound.
isn't it? And then, you know, one of the towns over, Penistana, translates into magic.
What a cool place.
You know, and it is, if you ask me, one of the spiritual and yogic meccas of the entire world.
Hmm.
There are, you know, 3 main studios, yoga studios here. Each studio probably has 8 to 10 classes a day, and each class can have anywhere between 20 and 60 people in them.
Hmm. Wow.
There's thousands of people doing yoga here. But for me too, like, you know, I have a strong tendency to move towards comfort as opposed to moving towards spiritual growth.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's like if I have the option to like sit down and watch a movie with my girlfriend, or go out and have dinner with like 4 supposedly really cool random strangers,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like, put the cassette in, let's watch a movie, honey.
Yeah.
You know, and as I'm here, I'm coming more face to face with that. You know, because like I'm somebody who has definitely experienced social anxiety over his lifetime.
Hmm.
You know, it's I love being social. I'm often quite good at it, but in many ways it scares the living daylights out of me.
Yeah. I mean, how would people know? Here you are on the second podcast with me, you know,
Yeah.
you're awesome. You teach in front of people. You've got your online course, you know, but social anxiety, I know exactly what you mean. Social anxiety, and especially the discomfort of that spiritual vulnerability with people. That can be really, really hard to show that. Well, so
Mm-hmm.
that's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's yeah, I mean, basically it's an awesome place here, and there is room for growth on so many levels and so much opportunity for, you know, deep, deep, deep seated healing if someone throws themselves into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I want to bring this back to my, you know, the listeners who are thinking to themselves, you know,
Yeah.
spirituality, chronic pain, you
Yeah.
know, what should I be exploring in my own life? What should I be looking
Yeah.
for? I mean, you made a huge shift in your life to seek, you know, to put yourself in an environment of discomfort that would cause growth for you. And
Mm.
that's really profound. You know, you
Mm.
said, I'm going to get outside of the comfort box. I'm literally going to move to the other side of the planet, and I'm going to go and allow myself to I mean, surrender is a strong word, but sort of like submit to the discomfort zone, you know?
Mm, mm,
And that's
yeah.
making, you know, it sounds like that's making really profound and positive changes in your life. I would assume
Mm,
in the life of your girlfriend and in you guys' relationship, you know,
mm.
for people listening, it's like, gosh, you know, what kind of really profound change do they need to be making that could be really uncomfortable, but maybe the best thing for them? You know,
Man, yeah, keep going, please.
oh yeah, I just appreciate you, you know, being vulnerable enough to realize that about yourself, to make that decision and then change and you know, make that big shift in your life. That's a great example for other people to be following and to be learning
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think one of the scariest things that people can ask themselves are, am I leading the life that I want to be leading, and am I where I want to be?
from.
You know, and it's like, is my 15-year marriage still serving me? Does this job really provide me with the happiness that I need to to go through my life?
Hmm.
You know, I heard this great quote last night. Love yourself as if your life depended on
Wow. That's
it.
great. Yeah.
It's kind of brilliant, right?
Yeah, it is brilliant. Yeah.
You know, because your life depends on it.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes making, you know, the kind of shift that we have to make and walking into the unknown is the scariest thing we can possibly do, because it means radically changing our lives.
Yeah.
You know, and listen, let me keep going. That's not to say, hey, if somebody's in chronic pain, they have to change their life. No, no, not at all. You know, there are so many different components to chronic pain. And let's just we can break down two of them right here. There's clearly the musculoskeletal component. There's tightness in tissue, there's weakness in tissue, there's joints that don't move properly, there's,
Hmm.
you know, there's stuff like this. Everything that, you know, I cover in my applied yoga integration courses, everything that NKT works with, things that, you know, physical therapists can work with and stuff. There's the whole musculoskeletal terrain that causes pain. You know, that's real.
Right.
But there's also this emotional component. You know, and I had a client just like 3-4 days ago that blew me out of the water. I actually want to tell you two different stories.
Okay.
But this client blew me out of the water because, you know, I opened up my practice here in Bali. I'm just starting. I'm seeing a couple people a day, something like that. And this guy comes in. He's 28. He's from Spain. Super attractive guy, like super strong, like physically fit. You know, it's 88 degrees here in Bali, or 90 degrees. So, you know, nobody's wearing t-shirts half the
Right.
time. And like, I mean, just super fit. And he's like, I'm in chronic pain. My forearms hurt. My back hurts. My chest hurts. My hips hurt. Like everything hurts. You know, and he starts telling me this, and he's like, I got a massage the other day. She just dug super deep into all of it. I'm like, okay, how is it today? He's like, same. You know, and he starts telling me all this stuff about his pain. And then he's like, I've got an MRI on my brain. I've gotten an MRI on my arm. You know, I've gotten an MRI on my hip. They all show nothing. Okay. And I'm telling you, the guy is like, not only is he like, you know, physically fit and attractive, but he's got great energy.
Hmm.
Like I'm totally like I like who he is. I don't feel uncomfortable really, you know, like it's a good connection. And then he says to me, I don't feel any emotions.
Whoa.
And I said, I'm sorry. He goes, yeah. And that's the other thing. He's like, I don't feel any emotions. When I was 18, my father died. I completely shut myself down, and I'm not able to feel anything. I've never been in love. He's there with a woman, by the way. He's like, I've never been in love,
Oh
you
wow.
know? Yeah, I know. I know. It was
Okay,
funny
just
moment.
dropping that bomb. Okay. Whoa.
Totally, totally. He's completely open, you know,
Wow.
but he's except for this place where he's completely shut.
Hmm.
And I looked at him and I was like, okay, listen, I'm going to put you on the table soon. I'm going to start doing some work on you. I'm going to look and see what's happening in your body. I'm going to give you my best perspective. If you are not able to feel your emotions, that stuff is going to get stuck in your body. You know, that stuff is going to kind of eat away at you and tear down your inner lining of your psychic nervous system until you have the courage to face what's going on. You know, and I went through the session with him, and I found a couple things in his body. There's nothing that I did to his body that is going to make him feel free in his body. You know, the thing that gentleman needs, he's like, at the end of the session, he's like, what do you think? I'm like, well, you know, I think you have, you know, some musculoskeletal things, you know, that are affecting you for sure. But I think that you're probably still really hurt and really shut down about what happened to your father 10 years ago. And I think when you go back to Spain, or wherever, you know, you land, it would be the best possible thing for you to find a psychotherapist who can work, you know, somatically, who can work with your body and your mind and your emotions and help you process this stuff, because I think it's really killing you inside.
Yeah. Wow, that's heavy.
You know, it was just such a fascinating situation to have this guy say, I don't feel emotions. You know? So let's transition to another story I want to tell you.
Okay.
Which is, you know, people in Ubud, people here in this particular part of Bali, are very focused on spiritual growth. You know, people are here because they want to heal. They want to do workshops on healing the inner child. They want to do workshops on releasing emotions. They want to do workshops on understanding their sexuality better. They want to do workshops on, you know, the consciousness in this area is incredibly supportive for self-growth. So when I was first becoming a body worker back in, you know, 1999, and then when I really started becoming professional in 2001 and 2002, I started having situations arise that I'm sure you've experienced several times, and a lot of other, you know, PTs, chiros, and massage therapists, and anyone who works one-on-one clinically with someone experience, where you're working on someone, and all of a sudden they start crying.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, some sort of emotional response arises, and they start to purge, and they weren't prepared for it. They're kind of shocked. Some people resist it. Sometimes it's too hard to resist, you know, and there's this big emotional release. So I had that happen for, you know, the first several years of my massage practice. And I held space for it. I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. But, you know, somewhere around 2004, 2005, when I started to become incredibly fascinated with human biomechanics and actually working with injury, I made the decision that I, you know, wasn't going to facilitate or encourage those kind of emotional responses, because I wanted to work on the joints in the body.
Okay.
Decision I made. Now, that's not to say that over all my years of practicing, I didn't have many people just break down and cry in my office. You know, that type of experience is something that I have more than enough capacity and more than enough space to hold for somebody. You know, my stepfather growing up was a psychologist. My mom was a counselor. I was guided into how to listen to people, how to be sensitive to people, you know, all this stuff. You know, and honestly, I think all of that comes through in all of my yoga teaching as well, because to reach a student, you have to be able to see and hear a student. Anyway, since I've been here, you know, I've been doing some self-work on myself, and my yoga practice has changed. It's not just asanas and motor control stuff. Like, I've been connecting to some deeper energies inside of myself, and, you know, maybe doing like a little shaking or a little like vocal sounding or whatever. I don't want to go into that too much, but just learning to connect deeper to my emotions within my daily yoga practice. So I had an experience, and it lasted for about a week here, where people were coming to me complaining about their hip pain or their back pain or their shoulder pain or whatever it was. And I start working on it, and it becomes really clear to me, and I'm a very intuitive and I'm a very sensitive person, that what they are experiencing has some stored and trapped emotions in it.
Hmm.
We've all felt that from our clients, right?
Yeah.
So the amazing thing is that I'm in Bali, and and most of the people here are in this mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So with two of these clients in particular, I'm working on one's hip or one's lower back, and all of a sudden she's just like, oh, I just feel the emotion coming out. I'm like, let it out, start making some sounds. And she just starts like going, like just getting it out, getting out the energy that's trapped and stored within that muscle tissue and within really their heart and mind. And, I gave her a pillow and she started screaming into the pillow, and then she started crying. And then, at a certain point that started to fade, and a lot of the intensity of the energy started to fade. And I'm then just working on her back and I'm working on her hip. And then I'm doing about 45-minute sessions these days. So at about 40 minutes or so, we bring it to a close, and like she gets up and she's just bright.
Wow.
Like there's a radiance coming from her eyes. And she is like, my back and my hip have not felt this free since I had my first kid 10 years ago.
Wow.
And it's like, yeah, right. I love working with a physical body, but just like I said to you earlier in our conversation, my goal in life is not to have a perfect physical body. My goal in life is to have a completely liberated mind. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm probably not going to go back to school for psychotherapy. But if there's a way that I can merge the, physical and spiritual and psychological within my scope of practice, which everything here is within my scope of practice easy, then can I find a way to really facilitate a much deeper physical and spiritual healing for these people. And I think that's part of the turn that my practice is going towards, at least here while I'm in Bali.
Tell me right now, how can people connect with you?
Well, I guess the easiest way to connect with me is through my Facebook and Instagram pages. It's Jory Serota, Yoga and NKT. So you can always find me there. I post stuff relatively regularly. And then, of course, there's my website, appliedyogaintegration.com. Once you get there, if you guys are interested in joining my email list, there's a free 10-page ebook on yoga alignment and my thoughts on alignment, with professionally drawn photos that I had done just for this book. So you can hop and see me there, and I've got some online courses on there, yoga therapy courses. So those are the best ways to find me.
Awesome. Thanks, Jory. Thank you for having the willingness to go, explore new realms and change the journey that you're on to, go to different depths of vulnerability within your own life, and just for sharing that with us today. I really appreciate it. You've been able to go through a great journey of yoga and traveling and your own spirituality and what's happened within you emotionally. It's really profound. A lot of people need to hear what you've said today, and I'm really happy that I'm able to share that with the audience who listens to this podcast. I appreciate your honesty here on the show. You've shared a lot, and it's been really great.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you being able to facilitate a space where it's easy for me to do that.
Thanks for listening to this episode with Jory Serota. Again, find all the links to his websites and his social media in the show notes. If you want to be involved with the podcast, there are 2 ways for you to do that. First, if you have any questions you want answered or topics you want us to talk about, then click on the Beat Pain website link in the show notes and message me. Second, if you want to continue listening to great content and guests, then I need your help to build the podcast and get those guests on the show. The bigger the podcast gets, the easier it is for me to bring on more guests. Subscribing, writing a review, and sharing this with others helps this show to grow. Thanks so much for listening.